All right. Good morning, everyone. This is our weekly Hypnosis Talks with me, Jessaiah, and as usual, the great Pete. And we are doing our 20 minutes today. And we want to just, continue on this topic of how to get from your present self and situation to your more desired self and situation. And, this is the third session now that we've continued to talk about this because, in my mind, and my experience with myself and others, it's one of the biggest things that people are working with. And, it's something where a lot of us do what we can, reading, watching, videos, going to a therapist if our insurance covers it, trying to do self hypnosis tricks and all these things. And there's so much value in those. And then if you have, the resources to be able to go to a practitioner, and then you're blessed enough to find a good one, what those differences are of working with a practitioner, and how they can get you to these places. And so I just wanted to explore, with Pete today, just about, what the differences are of working with a practitioner and how that might, bring you, to certain places, and then with by yourself. And so we'll just kind of start there.
Yeah. So this is one where for all of us that can remember the handheld paper maps, right? And this is a great way of understanding like how our mind with someone versus on our own. Because with both of them, you can get to where you want to go. One takes a lot more attention than the other, a lot more focus than the other, right? So even if you remember MapQuest days, right, you still had to print out, write down, and you had to really pay attention to the roads, right? You had to pay attention. Oh, here's going to be a stop sign. Here's the left-hand turn. And you have to be so focused on what you're doing, right? That you may miss other things going on around you, right? That is what it's like going on your own versus a modern GPS, right? Pretty much all our phones have them. If not, we have them in our cars. We just plug it in. We can look at all the other stuff and it'll be like, hey, in 200 feet, we're going to take a left, right? You don't have to be so focused on the map anymore. You can actually be focused on the journey. That is a big difference. Even with myself, there's, I'd say, things I'd rather go to someone else for, just because I know if I do it myself, it's going to take longer and it's going to take a lot more effort, and I can't just enjoy the ride, right? I can't just enjoy the process because I have to be in it. I have to be part of it. And sometimes it's nice just to be able to enjoy the ride.
Right. Yeah, that's a really great point. It's like, and then, there's of course the difference. Some people want to be the driver, right? Because they don't trust somebody else, or they just think that they could get themselves there better. Some people like to be chauffeured, right? And that of course can transfer over to also working with someone, or maybe someone's driven you before and, you guys got an accident. So you don't trust somebody as much, right?
Yeah.
But so when you work with someone like, we have people that watch that are practitioners, and also people that are interested, in hypnosis as a client. So what would you say? So do you agree that the self hypnosis and that hypnosis with a practitioner are both equally valuable, or do you think it's case by case? What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, they're both valuable, right? One of the things I say with all my clients is I want them to learn how to do it without me, right? And it's not that they can do everything, right? So like if we think of like the practical side of things of like, regression work or childhood trauma or past life, right? That is stuff you can't do just on your own, right? You really need that guide who, one, you trust. You nailed that one on the head. If there's no trust, there's no work that's going to be done. And two, that you get to go, okay, this person understands me and they know where I'm trying to go, right? that's when you can really enjoy the whole journey itself. But then there's other stuff where you need the practitioner, the hypnotist, to teach you, right? You don't know what you don't know, right? And this is one where if you just do self-hypnosis, and this is one where I get clients all the time who they go, Pete, like I've been listening to YouTube videos for years, and then they come to an in-person session or one-on-one, I should say, not really in person because we do virtual now, but you know, one-on-one session, and they go, wow, that is really different, you know, because there's things you can't teach just in an audio program. There's things that you need to really be directed so someone can watch to go, yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're going in the right direction. Yeah, keep going, right? You need that because then we get to go, okay, well, I get to trust it more. But ultimately, we want everyone to learn how to, when they leave us, to go, hey, every day, take 5 minutes, go through this process, right? Open up your own mind in the safety of your own home. Because as great as the change work is in my office, the real world is where a difference gets made. You know, and if they can take what they learn and bring it into the real world, that's where the real magic happens. You know,
right.
They can take the skills and use them when it's actually needed.
Yeah. And you know, another thing, I was just actually listening to let's see, Jay Shetty interviewing Tony Robbins. And one thing that Tony was saying is that I guess some researchers or doctors actually came and studied, you know, the energy that's coming from him, and then the way that the people in the audience were responding, and that the audience was actually resonating, kind of, I can't remember the exact term he used. I don't know if you might remember, but that, you know, that they were resonating from the experience with him. And, you know, just that there is an incredible truth of the science of our bodies, that we do, you know, get coherent with others. So it's like there's such a power to connect to your own awareness, to your own experience, and to be able to self-regulate yourself. But we're also co-regulating beings. And so if and when we can find a practitioner that we can feel comfortable and confident to work with, where there's a level of trust, then there's many layers that are happening, not just them telling you something and you following. There's actually a lot of other kind of regulating that's happening. And then of course, a lot of learning, right? Like
Right.
wiring and all of that.
There's a great experiment out there where I think a guy took either 42, 50 metronomes, right? And he put them all at different times, right? So they're kind of all out of sync. And I think it was within like 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, they were all in sync, right? They all just flowed in time together. And that is one of the greatest things about being around like-minded people for where we're trying to go is we will fall in sync with them, right?
I love that. I think that's really important for, you know, us to really remember and to just highlight that. And, you know, to me, that brings another depth to, you know, the saying that you are a combination of the 7 people that are closest to you, right? And if you're trying to get to a certain place, you know, to consider, you know, who you're around, you know, and that you sync up in that way. It's a fascinating human principle.
Yeah, it's why, like, you always hear about it when people go to, it doesn't matter if it's a Brendan Bouchard, Tony Robbins, they all get amped, they all get like jacked up, and they're all so excited. And while they're there, they're all in sync, right? And then what happens when they leave? Now they're off sync to everything around them, right? And so they have to fall back in line to what's around them. Now, the successful people, they stay in touch with the high sync people, right? They just don't go, oh, the seminar's over, I'm going home, expecting to keep that energy. They stay in touch with those people who keep that energy so they can stay in sync with it.
So and that's what just kind of leads me to this other thing, talking about like your present self and situation and your desired future self and situation. this would be another reason to sink into like SINK and SYNCH, right? To your future self, because that will be another plus one of the group that you're hanging out with, right?
Right.
And so I could see through this conversation right now another level of the importance of developing and spending time with and as if you are that future self in real time, so that
Yeah.
it's like that future and present self can start to sync, right? I
Right.
mean, how do you, like what tips would you suggest for making sure that your future self, your present self syncs to the future one and the future one doesn't sync to the present one?
Yeah.
How's the
So
future one stronger?
this is one I'd say is the hardest part in the entire process, but it's really not too hard when we think about it.
Yeah.
So we have our current level, right, of like kind of what we are, who we are, right? And when we bring ourselves into our future self, we're at a higher level or lower, hopefully higher, right? At a higher level. And what happens is when we get up to that higher level, our mind goes, well, this isn't who we are. This is who we are. That it wants to pull you back down. And so when we go, okay, so as my future self, I think this way. We pop right up. We think that way, but it's not our normal way of thinking yet. So we think that way, we get a good result, and then we go back down, right? But that worked, right? We got a good result, but it's just not who we are yet. So when we go back down, we have to remind ourselves, no, as a future self, we pull ourselves back up, right? You pull yourself up enough times, right? If you think about it, when we learn to ride a bike, it's the same principle. When you first get on a bike and you get that first push, you make it 5-10 feet, and then you fall over, right? You go to 5-10 feet, you fall off. You go, no, I'm going to get back on. You get back on the bike. Now you go 10-15 feet, then you fall off. You go, nope, getting back on, you go back up. Now you make it 50 feet, right? Then you get to go, okay, I fell, I stumbled, I wobbled, but I didn't really fall off yet. And you go back up. Next thing you know, you're up here permanently. You can ride your bike for however long you want, for however far you want, without ever worrying about falling off.
Yeah.
But you have to fall off to be able to go longer, to learn something new, to get better at it. That way it stays there. But the hard part is people are afraid to fall off.
Well, there's the fear of falling off, and then there is the giving up opposed to the persistence. That's another thing that I'm understanding what value there actually is with that, which I think, a lot of people can really feel with like meditation or sitting with themselves, and everyone says the more persistent you get, stay, the easier it can become. But then, there is the topic that I mentioned, which is, how it's now classified as like neuro differences, right? And of course, it's silly to even suggest that one brain is the normal, and I don't appreciate or even like the deficiency or the disorder. I don't think that's proper, but I do think it's proper to say that there's different ways that brains function, of course, in different ways that chemicals and wiring happen, of course. So I'm just curious, like what you have to say about, from what you understand, different ways that people's brains can work to get them to a place. And I just will say for the viewers that it's from what I've been researching, which is that, there's certain parts of the brain that know that you should do something, and then the other part of the brain that does the thing. And then there's, of course, the various chemicals and wirings, but there's apparently many ways. So some of these techniques that we talk about, or that your hypnotist or your therapist give you, you might find them working so well for you, and for others it just doesn't, as a practitioner or as a client. So I'm curious what you have to say about all of
Yeah.
that.
You know, we all learn at different speeds and rates and abilities, right? It's very unfair. And again, like this is, I would say I fall trap to this all the time. Like it's between me and my wife, right? My wife will look at me. She goes, I'm not you. I can't just get up and do it, right? She goes, you kind of just go into things just expecting the best. She goes, I can't do that. That's not who I am, right? And as practitioners, we need to respect that, right? We need to understand that everyone's journey is going to be different, right? Some of them, yes, they'll be really quick. They're all in. Other ones, we need to break it down into just small, chewable steps where they get to build that muscle, right? They get to build those skills to go, oh yeah, like I can do this, you know, because that's just how realistically how our mind works, right? We have people who are really good at focus, people who can't focus at all, right? What's the difference between the two? Who realistically knows, right? But a person who has trouble focusing, it isn't that they can't focus, they just need to go slower, right? They just need, the baby steps before they can get to where that focused person is.
Well, the other part I've noticed as a practitioner has been how some people really can't stop the thinking mind, that conscious, logical mind. And for me, I'm so the opposite of that, that I forget how it is, and even how sometimes people present a certain way, and I assume that they will be able to do that, and I find out no, they can't stop the mind. It's logical. They couldn't get past that to get deep.
Yeah.
So that's been interesting too to witness.
That's when you use the mind to your advantage. If someone is very logical, you use that logic with them.
And that's what I found was having them write the number in their mind on a chalkboard and erase it. That really helped them calm down, and then I was able to speak where they didn't have to listen to the subconscious. And sometimes it's still so amazing when you go like, I don't know how this works, but it works, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
All the time.
And I think that's what you're saying, right? Like that's a moment where you're using the mind, you're using its need to be holding on to something and being logical. Is that an example of what you're talking about?
Yeah, right. Because when we think of like even a logical person, they do have an imagination, right? But chances are they were told a lot of like, hey, you got to be in the here and now. You can't think about imagine, daydream. You can't do any of that. You got to be here and now. You got to think about the real things that are going to happen, right? And so that's what they do. So yes, you can go like, let's say someone is trying to get over anxiety, but they're like, Pete, like my boss causes me anxiety. I can't very well be like, well, he won't anymore. Right. You know, because the logic mind goes, no, that's who he is. He's just a boss who's high strung and causes anxiety. So if I go against that, they're gonna fight. They're gonna be like, that's not logical. I can't do that. But if you go, I wonder, what would it look like if your boss was still your boss, and instead of feeling anxiety, you just felt nothing, like nothing good, nothing bad. You just know that's who he is.
Yeah.
It begins to break it down, but you're letting them use their logic to see what that's like.
Right. And the wondering is, it's such an opening in opposed to a telling.
Yeah.
Wondering is just one of those real magical.
Yeah. Like one of the things I love, and I'll use it quite a bit, especially with logical people. I always go, I wonder what it would look like if you use your conscious mind and your unconscious mind together for this session. What would that look like?
Yeah, that's a nice one. There was something else that you said I wanted to mention about, we're just about at our 20-minute mark anyway, but just to kind of wrap up this, I've lost my train of thought. Perhaps you have a wrap up. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
it got lost.
I think a good wrap up really is understand who you are. Don't try and force yourself to be someone else, and use who you are as your advantage versus your disadvantage.
That's so great. That is so great. Like, here, let's just say it again and put it on this banner for any rewatches that happen. So say it again, please.
Oh boy.
We can listen to the recording.
Yeah,
But
it's be who you are, and use who you are to your advantage versus a disadvantage.
yeah, I think that's such a great takeaway. Because a lot of us, because we really do all have these gifts, sometimes you just need to reframe them, right? I was reading something about how they were saying, someone was saying that just about all of the new things that have happened, that have come to be, and the innovations, they came from creativity, they came from people who thought outside the box, and a lot of them would be classified as neuro different, divergent, or what have you, that
Yeah.
these things that could be considered deficiencies in our own self or from the world, have been proven over and over again, that actually they're quite advantageous. And that's good for us to remember too, like being kind to ourselves and knowing that they can be used as tools.
Yeah.
How do you spell disadvantage?
That's a good question.
Got it. All right. Well, I really do think that's, a great takeaway, and it's something that could even be an investigation. In fact, it's something that I've heard Joe Dispenza mention a few times, which is like when he's in his meditation, he says, "Who am I right now that I'd no longer like to be?" I think, don't quote me exactly, but then he says, and I sit there and say, when I get up from this meditation, who is it that I want to be? And it really gives you that opportunity to pay attention to both, and then make these like active efforts. And
Yeah.
and it's the same thing with hypnosis. It's like when you wake, you won't open your eyes or wake up until you have these things.
Yeah.
So we'll have to just keep going on it. But any last things you'd like to say, Pete?
No, it's just, take your time. This is a journey. It's not a sprint, right? Or marathon. That might be the right. It's a marathon and not a sprint.
Right.
It's the consistent effort we put in that creates the output.
Yeah. That's especially for someone who's impatient like yourself. It's a really good reminder. All right. Slow and steady wins the race with persistency.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Pete, so much. And for everyone who tuned in, and anyone saw a comment that you watch later and send us a message, we'll just keep going every week. All right. Until then, hope you all have a great week. And ciao.
Bye.